Let's get right to the point of why we're all here and excited. We have Gayle Callahan, who is in the bursar office. She retired in 2020, and in 2023, she and her husband, Mike, took a 2-week tour of Japan, and they did it by boat, and they stopped in 4 different ports, and they also went to South Korea. So Gayle is going to talk about 45 minutes, and then at the very end, we'll have some time for question. But thank you for your patience, and let's all welcome Gayle Callahan.
Arigato. Konnichiwa, Gayle Callahan desu. So, as Anita said, my husband and I did a Japan cruise in October of 2023, and we hit all 4 of the main Japanese islands. And these are a list of them. So we started here in Yokohama and worked our way counterclockwise. Went over to South Korea, back down then, and up there. So we'll be taking a tour around the islands today. Let's see. When we first arrived at Narita Airport, we spent the night at a hotel nearby, and we met Akiko on our shuttle to the hotel. And we were very, very fortunate to meet Akiko because she's a Japanese English interpreter. So we had a lovely visit with her and invited her to join us for dinner. My husband had already found where we were going to eat from Google Maps, and it was just down the hill, a little diner, a little low-slung diner. It seated maybe 20 people. And this is our chef, cook, cashier, procurement specialist. He did everything. He owns the shop and he does it all. And he's owned it for about 30 years, serves dinners and takes cash only, which is very typical in Japan. It's a very cash-based society. You do need to have cash when you travel in Japan. So we each ordered an entree, and we shared all around. So we had a pancake and some prawns and some pork with some rice and a couple beers, and it all cost $30 US dollars. Of course, exchange rate's very good right now too, so that helps. Then the next day, we went back to the airport, took the shuttle to the port of Yokohama. We went over this beautiful bridge, this Yokohama Bridge, on our bus, and then our ship went under this beautiful Yokohama Bridge and cleared it by about 4 feet. So it was very fun to watch that. And this is my husband. He's 6'6", by the way. Our first port, and Charlie was telling me that she tried to land in Japan in March of 2011. Our first port was Miyako, and it's up here still on the Honshu Island, so up on the northern part of that island. This is what happened to Miyako on March 11th, 2011. The tsunami hit, and it took out the town. It's all been rebuilt. Japan also was closed for COVID for 2.5 years, from about April of 2020 until October of 2022. So these folks have not had very many people visiting them since that tsunami because they had to rebuild. And they were very, very, very happy to see us. And they had quite the welcoming committee for us. They had their high school band playing. My son's a band teacher, so that was fun. We sent him videos of that. And they greeted us, and they had to send off all over town. They had these signs that said, "Welcome to Miyako." And it was just a little lovely town. They had interpreters for us when we got off the ship. And then again, we visited the market, which is a fish market, but it's also a grocery store. And there's lots of other stands in there. Our first stop, however, was at 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven is a place to go in Japan. It's where we got cash. We had just gotten a little bit of cash at the airport. So we went to an ATM there, got some cash, and I had gotten a cold. We actually flew into Honolulu and spent a couple days there before flying on to Tokyo. So I had caught a cold somewhere in my travels, and I needed some Kleenex. And so we stopped at 7-Eleven. We didn't get them this time, but 7-Eleven has the famous egg salad sandwich. It is awesome. If you go to Japan, be sure to get their egg salad sandwich. It comes crustless, and this bread is a milk bread, they call it. It's so creamy. So be sure you do that in Japan. After Miyako, then we went to the Hokkaido island, the very southern tip here, and visited Hakodate. We ended up being there for 2 days because our next port was Aomori, I believe, and there was bad weather predicted. And when you leave Japan, because our next port after that was in South Korea, everyone on the ship had to get off and go through customs, the crew, everybody, before we could leave Japan. So they kept us in Hakodate for 2 days so that we would have time to do the customs clearance. And that was really nice because Hakodate was a great little town, easy to get around and very interesting. So Japan was closed for over 200 years to Western trade, from about 1634 to about 1854. In 1853, 1854, President Fillmore sent Perry to open up a Japanese port, and he came to Hakodate. So we first went to this tower. They love their towers in Japan. So our first stop was to go up in this tower and look over this park, which was a citadel. And it's a star-shaped citadel, and it's now a park. And if you go during cherry blossom season, it's supposed to be quite amazing. The pictures were gorgeous. We got a little bit of fall color. This is late October, so we did get a little fall color there that was the farthest north we were. And here we are up in the tower. In Hakodate, they have a tram that's very convenient to use. And so we actually did the whole tram line. The day we went to the tower in the park, that's right here. The tower's right here. So we actually took a cab there, and then we walked back to the tram, and then we went to the Mount Hakodate. But near this station where we got back on the tram is this old switch tower. And this is said to be the oldest switch tower for the tram lines in Japan. So we were pretty pleased with ourselves for mastering the tram. Folks in Japan most of them don't speak English. More of them read, I understand, than speak English. Of course, we weren't in Tokyo. If you're in the big cities, you will find they more speak English, but there's definitely challenges with the language, but they're so very, very gracious and helpful that it really wasn't a challenge. They were just do anything to help us. So when we got to Mount Hakodate, we climbed a steep hill, we climbed a bunch of steps, and then we took the ropeway to get to the top of the mountain where we ate ice cream because Hokkaido is an island. The milk is supposed to be very good there, and it was. And then we got, this is actually off the rope. This is from the ropeway, this picture of the harbor. And then this is back down the island. And here is the statue of Commander Perry, who established the Western relations with Japan. We were hungry. It was lunchtime, and there weren't a lot of restaurants around, but somehow my husband noticed this place was a restaurant, and this was a menu. It wasn't Japanese, but they had a picture, and I had Google Translate. This is what all we got. It was a ton of food. It was a hamburger with kind of a gravy / barbecue sauce, a salmon bisque, a seaweed soup, rice, salad, potato salad. And it was all $750 yen. So, yeah, 950 yen. So it was about $7 in our money. And then they gave us a dessert flan as well. So we were quite pleased with our lunch. And we ate it all, which is also a rule of etiquette in Japan, is to eat all of the food you are given. I was a little worried about that because I don't eat a lot of Asian food, but it worked out fine for me. The other thing we had heard in Hakodate we wanted to be sure to do is visit the morning market and have this melon. So it was really, really, really good. We got some in the morning and we got some just before they closed because it was so tasty. And at the morning market, I tell the story, I didn't didn't put the video in because I just didn't put videos in, but we took a video at the morning market of someone eating in one of the shops, and she was eating squid, but the squid was jumping off the plate. It was very fresh, as they say. The other end of the tram line from Mount Hakodate was a shrine. Maybe that was, I don't remember. One end of the tram line was a shrine. The other end was this foot onsen. So we didn't do any of the full onsens, but we did enjoy a couple of foot onsens, and it felt pretty good. That day was a rainy day, getting ready for the rough weather. So if you don't know about Japanese toilets, I would encourage you to look it up. They are amazing. Except sometimes you run into one of these. It's a little bit more challenging, but Japanese toilets are a lovely thing. And I love, especially in the wintertime, the heated seats. So I recommend you find out more about those. They also have a lot of little buttons with a lot of little characters that are in Japanese and hard to read. So you probably need to study up before you go. So after Hakodate, at the end of that day, we went through customs, and then we sailed all night or cruised all night. And the next day we had a full sea day to get to Sakcho. So here's Sakcho, South Korea, on the other side of the Japan Sea. We came into Sakcho with dawn, and this was a beautiful scene of the sunrise on Sakcho with the mountains in the back. We there also had a welcoming committee of music and very friendly people there as well. This guy let me take his picture. He was showing us when the buses, were going and returning. And then this is just a picture of me in front of the tower. You'll see in just a minute. They like their towers in South Korea as well. This tower we went in, it was half price for seniors. We just had to show our passports. So that was kind of fun. They were having a garden festival. It was the end of the season, and it was a Sunday, I believe. And so there were lots of people about enjoying the gardens, and lots of sculptures, like these sculpted dolphins, but a very, very pretty place. I had been so worried about learning a little bit of Japanese. I completely forgot we were going to be visiting South Korea and had not learned how to say hello or thank you or downloaded. So the night before, I'm downloading Korean into my Google Translate. We went up to this cafeteria, and the maitre d' did speak a little bit English, so kind of showed us where to sit, got us a menu. I think it was in English, I don't remember, but we ordered a squid sundae, which was labeled as having healthy meats in it. I don't know. And we got all of this food, and it was delivered by this robot, and that was pretty fun. We didn't really like it, but we gave it all a try. We did really like these macaroons, though, that we got at the shop downstairs. And they were so pretty. So after we had some lunch, we went over to the Ferris wheel, and we rode the Ferris wheel. And so this picture we took, I believe, from the Ferris wheel of the beach and the city in the background and our ship there. And then we walked along the beach, and this is a bridge you saw in the first picture of Sakcho, with the sunlight on it. We had to walk over that bridge, and then we came to this Korean War memorial. And then we came to the village where the North Korean refugees mostly live. And they had they had shops in there as well that we visited. So I don't remember if I mentioned, but we were just 150 miles south of the North Korean border for the DMZ. The next day we were back in Japan, and it was my husband's 70th birthday. And so I decorated a little bit, and the captain brought him a cupcake, sent him a cupcake. So we were back in Saki Minato on the island of Honshu. So we're about here in Japan on October 22nd. That day we did have an excursion that we had booked, and they had shown us in the presentations of what to do on the shore, this bridge. And we got to go down this bridge on our big bus. It was steep. It was really, really cool. So our excursions were to the Yushin Gardens and the Adachi Museum. And so our first trip was the Yushin Gardens, where we were fed lunch, and there was a lot of food, and neither my husband or I or the other couple we were sitting with really cared for much of it. And we didn't eat it all, and it seemed to be okay, but you know, we felt badly because we knew that wasn't the etiquette. That's what was in the food. And then after that, we were free to walk around the gardens. It's not a real big place. It was very, very beautiful with Buddhist statues and other statues around the gardens. These are just floating dahlias in the water. This garden and Japan are known for peonies. They don't originate from Japan, but my understanding is that if you buy peonies, most of them now are cultivated in Japan. So that was a lovely spot, and you can see it was a really pretty day. We next went to the Adachi Museum, and I was confused because I thought we were going to a garden. This museum, and it looked like a garden, but it really is a museum. It has been named the best Japanese garden in the world by Japan Journal of Gardening for 20 years straight. It is a museum because you don't go out into the gardens. You view the gardens. They have windows, or they have an open air walkway. Mostly you're inside, but they did have some open air walkways where we were walking, but viewing the gardens. And they will show you, they have pictures hung up too, showing you what the garden looks like in other seasons. And that was really interesting. Back from our excursion, we had a little bit of time. And so we went up a tower. I think I mentioned the Japanese love towers. They actually have, you can collect towers, and we have a certificate. I have a certificate in my bag of going up this tower. This is the shortest tower in Japan that's on the collector's list, at least. And from there, we could see Mount Dyson, which our tour guide had kept saying, this is our little Mount Fuji. It's just a little Mount Fuji. I guess it kind of looked like Mount Fuji. And this was another view of the Sea of Japan. Sakiminato is a hometown of Mizuku Shigeru. If you know anything about manga or anime, you might be familiar with him. I don't. So, but there was a lot of his work around the area. So next we left Honshu Island and went to Kyushu Island. So it is, it's the southernmost portion of the main 4 islands in Japan. Okinawa is farther south. So we were in Kyushu, and we stopped here in Sasebo and Nagasaki, and then in Kagoshima. So we'll visit Sasebo. Sasebo's claim to fame is a US Navy base and the Sasebo burger. They created the Sasebo burger after World War II to appease US military who were on leave. And the Sasebo burger is this monster thing. It's 4+ inches tall. It consists of a bun, the patty, the bacon, ketchup, onion, tomato, salt and pepper, mayo, egg, lettuce, and another bun, of course. It's a messy thing to eat, but it was very good. It was very good, and you can certainly appreciate that the folks stationed there were hungry for a good hamburger, and that fit the bill. Other than that, there wasn't a lot to do in Sasebo. We were in a nice shopping arcade, so we did spend a little time shopping. I'm going to talk about shopping in a little bit. The next day, then we were in Nagasaki. That was a very, very busy day for us. We had the morning on our own, and we spent our time mostly in Chinatown. We visited this Confucius temple built in 1893, and it's a beautiful, beautiful spot. And I loved all these sages or philosophers, and there's my husband being a philosopher. Then nearby, there was a big plaza, and these children, they're probably 5 or 6, I would guess, were performing with their fans and their hats, and they were dancing to music, and it was really fun to watch them. They were really cute. And then there was Chinatown right nearby, where, of course, we got ice cream. We have ice creams with lots and lots of flavors in Japan. The other thing in Nagasaki that we only had time to walk by was a Dejima. It's a man-made island that is where the Portuguese and then Dutch, I think I have that right, maybe the other way around, lived and traded during the isolation period. So I mentioned Japan was closed for a couple 100 years. This was the only place in Japan where trade occurred with the Western world. on this man-made island. And we'd walked a lot, and so we were taking a rest before we went back to the ship to get some lunch and to get onto our excursion to go to the hypocenter of the atomic bomb explosion. Atomic bomb was dropped on August 9th, 1945 at 11:02 a.m. 150,000 people were injured or killed, and it destroyed about 1/3 of Nagasaki, which did kind of surprise me because I always thought the whole city was destroyed. But because of the mountains, only about 1/3 was destroyed. This is the remains of a cathedral that was right there at Ground Zero. This is a monument there at Ground Zero. I did not include the picture of the school children that were there, but school children come all the time to visit, and they sing songs. They bring these origami crane bundles, which we'll see next. This is Sadako Sasaki. She was 2 years old when the bomb was dropped, and she was severely radiated. She became ill with leukemia, and she hoped that if she could make 1,000 paper cranes, she would be cured. But she died at age 12 before she reached her goal. And so now the school children make the origami cranes, and they put them in bundles of 1,000 and bring them to the hypocenter at Ground Zero. So you see these beautiful bundles of cranes all around this area. There were a lot of children. We saw them in Chinatown, Nagasaki. We saw them, of course, at the Peace Park. We saw them in Kochi. We probably saw them other places. Those are places I really remember. October, November is a time when they do their school tours. So there were a lot of them visiting from around Japan. This is the Peace statue, and I just wanted you to see the cranes. I'm going to talk about the Peace statue next. So the Peace statue, I'll read this. The right hand points to the threat of nuclear weapons, while the extended left hand symbolizes eternal peace. The mild face symbolizes divine grace, and the gently closed eyes offer a prayer for the repose of the bomb victims' souls. The folded right leg and the extended left leg signify both meditation and the initiative to stand up and rescue the people of the world. The statue represents a mixture of Western and Eastern art, religion, and ideology. So it's at the front of the black marble vault that has names of the atomic bomb victims and survivors who died in subsequent years. At the back of the park then is this peace fountain. So back there you can see the peace statue and the fountain at the opposite end. In between there are, I don't know how many, probably close to 100 different statues that have been contributed by states and by other countries to symbolize peace and shown in this peace symbols zone. So yeah, Nagasaki was a sobering day, or afternoon at least. Shopping. Lots of shopping districts. I liked this one because I went to Pittsburgh State University, which was the only school that has the mascot of the gorilla. So I had to get my picture taken with the gorilla. And then this is a Chinatown, actually, Nagasaki. And I think this is Sasebo, but it could be somewhere else. But we ended up in a lot of shopping districts. So I'll talk about shopping just a little bit. Daiso, and there's another one, I can't remember its name, are 100 yen stores. So like our dollar store, only 100 yen is worth about 65 or 70 cents. They don't charge $1.25, they don't charge 125 yen, they charge 100 yen. And so it was a great place. They have everything. They have housewares, kitchen things. I got my granddaughter chopsticks, candy, socks, food, makeup. They have all kinds of things there. And it's big. It's a really fun place to look around. Kit Kats, I didn't see those at the dollar store or the 100 yen store, but when you find Kit Kats, they come in a ton of flavors. This Easter, I got some lemon ones, and those are really good. If you haven't tried them, you can get those here in the States, but the lemon ones were great. Strawberry, banana, chestnut, matcha or green tea. That was really good too. We really liked those. So try the Kit Kats if you can. When you're in Japan, you don't carry food around with you, eating and drinking it. They just don't do that. You need to find a place to sit down. You can get a drink from a vending machine. We'll see that next. They have tons of vending machines for drinks, and you can get a drink from there and drink it and then put it in the recycle bin, but they don't walk around holding food and drinks in Japan. Here's the vending machines. You saw them everywhere. They were just out there on the street. And I really like this. We really like this little car. I think this is the Honda N. We're like, why can't we buy this car? We had a Scion XB that we loved for so long, and we just wanted a cute little car. We've actually found a dealership selling these, and they were about $10,000 or $11,000. Like, how do we get that over here? But they do drive on the opposite side of the road from us, so that would be a problem. Here's some of the Kit Kats, and here's a Daiso 100 yen store. The vending machines, to my husband's disappointment, don't have Diet Coke, and that was true in Europe. I think Diet Coke they have Coke Zero. So Diet Coke is kind of just an American thing now, I guess. We were told about the stickers on the cars. We didn't see them. One of our guides had pointed them out, but apparently if you're a new driver or an older driver, or you've had a driving infraction, you have a sticker on your car. So these were some of the stickers I found after we got back and looked into them. Okay, our next stop was in Kagoshima. So Kagoshima, here's Japan, here's the southern island Kyushu, and then Kagoshima is up in this beautiful harbor. And across from Kagoshima is Mount Sakurajima, and it is a active volcano. And so that is why Kagoshima is known as the Naples of the East, for that big, beautiful sweeping coastline and the active volcano. And you can see here some of the volcanic ash coming out. It was a pretty mild day. It was a warm, beautiful day. You see, we're very far south. There's palm trees and the volcano, and it was warm. We then found a foot onsen on the island. We took the car ferry over. So we took the car ferry over to the volcano mountain and spent a little time there, found the foot onsen. We were pretty close to the beach here where the water was not as warm. Closer to the volcano, it was quite warm. And then there's a beautiful lava beach. We went up a hill and found this shrine, which was beautiful. It had been destroyed years ago by the eruption. And you can see the volcanic ash was a little bit stronger, or the winds were different or something right then. We came back over to the mainland, and the aquarium is right there. And they had a dolphin show. So they had a free dolphin show. We watched from the outside, and that was fun. We also visited the Museum of the Meiji Restoration. Now, everything was in Japanese, so we didn't get a lot out of it. There was a nice diorama, and there was a little sumo wrestler exhibit. But they did have a film for us. And the gal at the counter came and got us, took us down to the theater, and told us where to sit, and gave us some headphones so we could hear that in English. And it was very interesting to hear about them secretly sending Satsuma students to Great Britain to learn the ways of the West at the end of the time when they were closed to foreign trade. Our last port was Kochi, and that's on the final island of Shikoku. And so this is where Kochi is. The famous thing in Kochi is the Kochi Tower or Kochi Castle. To get to it, you walk up a really steep hill, and then you walk up some steps, and then you walk up to get to the top of the castle, 150 steps, and they're really, really steep, and they're really, really low clearance. So my 6'6" husband with bad knees from basketball injuries did not do any of those things. He did find, while I was walking up all those steps, he found a path that had switchbacks and didn't have steps. It was just a ramp. And so they had several of those around this large area. And so he got up there. So when I looked out, he was up there taking my picture. And this was the only time in Japan that I had to remove my shoes. So we didn't go inside any temples. The Confucian temple did not require us to remove our shoes. So this is the only time I had to remove my shoes. So there's my sock foot. Isn't that fascinating? Also in Kochi, you may have seen pictures of this beautiful Hariyama Bridge. There's a legend about a young monk falling in love with a beautiful merchant's daughter, and he bought her a hairpin, and that was a scandal. So he was exiled, and she was sent away, and that was the end of their love affair. And that's a sad, typical Japanese legend, I guess. We were ready for lunch. There was a lovely outdoor shopping center. We saw all kinds of good food, but no place to go sit and eat it. So we waited until we found this counter and had a lovely lunch. We had cucumbers with sesame and soy vinegar, shrimp dumplings, chicken wings. They were the best chicken wings I've had in a long time. And I had remembered here, so the Japanese at the beginning of a meal, they say ikadakimasu. That means bon appetit. And at the end of the meal, they say gochizo sama deshita. And that means it was a feast. And so I said that to the server, and I just got a great big grin from him. And that really made my day. It was worth the trouble of remembering those phrases. So I enjoyed that. A few more things that we've seen on the streets of Japan. We saw bicycles, but not like I expected. I think I must have been thinking of China. The bigger cities we saw more bicycles, and we saw bicycles everywhere, but not. I just was in Amsterdam, so it's not a bicycling place like Amsterdam or when I think of Taiwan or China. And then we saw these lovely fufu puppies. Obviously, their dog walker was taking them out. These are a couple post boxes. I mailed postcards from both of these post boxes, and they got there about 3 weeks later. It was 100 yen, or about 70 cents for the stamp. And then this just amused me. Here's an umbrella dryer. So very efficient. Japan is 14 hours ahead of us here in Kansas City. My 6-year-old granddaughter really had a little trouble with that. And when we called her and told her it's Monday morning, and she said, no, it's Sunday afternoon. And we said, no, it's Monday morning. We are in the future. She just said, well, I want to be in Japan and be in the future. So she had a time of that. So in that same vein, we watched the Chiefs game, a Sunday afternoon Chiefs game. We got up at 5 a.m. to watch it and had room service. We did a lot of walking. This is probably kind of normal walking for me, but it was a lot for my husband with his bad knees. And there were no sea days. We had a sea day when we first got on. We had a sea day at the very end. We only had one sea day in between those 9 ports. So a lot of being on our feet. My son got a real kick out of seeing that I was driving in the middle of the Sea of Japan or wherever. And last thing, McDonald's is the #1 fast food place in Japan. We did have McDonald's. We had just cheeseburger, Coke, and fries. I would say everything was a little bit smaller, maybe not the cheeseburger. The Coke and fries were smaller, but just as good. But we did see things on the menu like a teriyaki burger, and they did have macarons. I can never say it in English. Macarons. But on Christmas Day, although only 1% of the Japanese are Christian, on Christmas Day, everybody eats KFC. They get their bucket of chicken, they have a party. It's a very secular holiday for them. And this just summarizes our trip. Again, we went from Yokohama to Miyako, to Hakadari, to Sakcho, Sakiminato, Saseba, Nagasaki, Kagoshima, Kochi, and then back into Yokohama. So with that, questions? Yes.
Is there a particular reason, this is Anita, and maybe you can repeat the question.
Okay.
It's a marvelous presentation.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you chose Japan, Korea,
So Anita's asking why we chose Japan. My husband, when he was in his 20s, he backpacked around the world for 9 months. He went a lot of places. He did not go to Japan. He always wanted to go to Japan. When I retired in 2020, we had been thinking we'd take a big trip, but it was 2020. So we didn't take a big international trip. And so we were kind of at that point where, okay, we need to figure this out. We need to take a trip. And he had always wanted to go there. I had not ever been interested in Asian culture or food. I just hadn't been exposed to it. So I was a little hesitant because that's okay because we're going to do a cruise. And so that suited both of us very nicely. I didn't have to worry about what I was going to eat. I didn't have to worry about the language. He never worried about language. He can mime. I guess I can't mime. I always want to learn a little bit of language. But it worked really well for us. And I feel like with the cruise, I mean, I would love to go back now and see Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, some of the major cities. But I do feel like with the cruise, we got to really see some of the off the beaten path kind of things too. Yeah.
What are the unexpected for what you were anticipating versus what you actually experienced, and what was your?
Okay, so she asked what of my time there, what was the most different than what I anticipated, and what was my favorite moment. I mean, you hear that the Japanese people are lovely, but they really are very, very lovely. So gracious, so refined, so welcoming, although they don't want you to stay, but they were really happy for you to visit. But just how helpful they were to us. You know, we'd be in a shop and we'd say, we need to go here. And they would walk us out of the shop and walk us down the street in the right direction, or in the Meiji Restoration Museum. The gal at the counter, who was probably the only one that spoke any English, we came back and said, well, we need a cab. She called a cab for us, and then she walked us all the way out to the cab and told the cab driver where we needed to go. Those kinds of things happened all the time. So those were all beautiful moments, and to just see the culture. And so, yeah, just those moments where we got to just witness, we would see, ladies meet each other, going in and out of shops and bowing, and just kind of seeing that for real for yourself was really cool. Any questions from the Zoom, folks on Zoom? Do we need to unmute them? We'll unmute you so you can ask.
Let me see if I can stop sharing.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, and also, let's see, there's a chat. Okay, somebody asked you if you went to the DMZ. Here's the only question there, but
Okay.
are they all unmuted now?
I don't know.
Okay.
No, because Jonathan's muted.
Let's see. Can I unmute? What? Mute all. Let's see. We can mute all current participants. I don't want to do that. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Oh, okay. We can do that. Yes. So if they have a question, they can unmute themselves and ask the question.
Okay. Someone asked if we went to the DMZ. We did not. There was an excursion there, but we did not go there.
Gayle, I don't have a question, but that's a phenomenal presentation. It looks like a fantastic trip.
Thanks, Jonathan. It was a fantastic trip. Anita asked me if I felt safe, and yes, absolutely felt very safe there. Everywhere we went. Okay, she was asking if I would do anything differently. Well, I didn't know that the cruise went on to Singapore and Hong Kong. I don't remember the order, but it went on. And I told my husband, I said, man, we should have done that. But then again, that probably would have been overload for me because, like I said, I had really focused on trying to learn a few phrases of Japanese, and learn to eat a little bit of the food. And so to add more countries would have been too much for me. But yeah, it was a fascinating cruise. Maybe spend a little bit of time in Tokyo. I think, there was just a little bit, but I would go back. I would go back and try to spend time in Tokyo and Kyoto, Osaka, if I get that chance.
What was the main between Japan and Tokyo?
Oh, good question. We did feel like we noticed that the South Koreans were larger people. They drove larger cars. So I showed you the cute little in car. In South Korea, they drove the cars that the Korean cars that we drive, same size and everything. Whereas the Japanese cars were all a little bit smaller. I think that's hard to say. We were only in South Korea the day, and we spent kind of most of our time just looking at it. So I didn't get too much exposure to it, but those were a couple things we noticed. Anything else? Thank you all. Arigato.